Welcome back, Focus Learners. Today, we're unpacking something we all desperately want more of: creativity. We're going to explore the surprising neuroscience behind how we actually generate our absolute best ideas. What's literally happening inside your brain when that light bulb goes off, and more importantly, how we can naturally trigger it. Let's get right into it.
So, to start us off, how do geniuses unlock their creativity? I want you to consider the secret habits of brilliant minds throughout history. When you picture a creative genius hard at work, what do you see? Do you picture someone hunched over a desk, gripping a pen, furrowing their brow in this state of extreme, uninterrupted focus? Well, as we're about to see, that intense, locked-in focus might actually be the exact thing holding your best ideas back.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, Habits of Creative Geniuses.
When we look at the actual habits of some of the most famous creators in history, their routines tell us a lot about how the human brain actually wants to work. Look at what these historical heavyweights all have in common: habits of motion. They didn't just sit perfectly still. Mark Twain, he famously paced around the room while dictating his work. Charles Dickens was known for taking these incredibly long walks to generate his thoughts. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe literally composed poetry while riding on horseback. And Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, he frequently composed his absolute masterpieces while riding in the back of a carriage. They all incorporated these specific, kind of eccentric physical movements into their daily routines. They're basically painting a picture of creativity through constant motion.
And you know what? This wasn't just some crazy coincidence. Back in the 1940s, a historian named Rosamund Harding studied the creative processes of these famous musicians and writers. Looking at all this movement, she wrote that state of mind is most favorable to the birth of ideas. I love that. It plants a really interesting seed, doesn't it? The idea that physically moving around and subtly diverting our attention is actually the key to unlocking those brilliant ideas.
Moving right along to Section 2, the right-brained myth.
Before we get into the modern neuroscience of exactly how movement helps us, we really need to tear down a massive misconception. You've probably seen a diagram like this a million times, right? Society has long believed in this strict, rigid divide. The idea that your brain's right hemisphere is the colorful, creative, artsy side, and the left hemisphere is the cold, calculated, logical side. Well, we're setting this up right now purely so we can tear it down.
Yeah, you can completely forget the hemispheres. First things first, modern research tells us to throw that whole right brain, left brain myth right out the window. When you quote-unquote use your imagination, you are not just lighting up one half of your head. You're actually using tons of different structures distributed across your entire brain. True imagination is absolutely a whole brain activity.
Which brings us to Section 3, Your Brain's 3 Networks.
So, if it's not a simple left-right divide, how does it actually work? Well, recent research points to the interaction of 3 specific brain networks, starting with the executive attention network. This network relies heavily on your working memory. It's basically the anchor for your intense, task-oriented focus. Think about when you're sitting down to solve a really hard calculus problem, or, trying to assemble flat-pack furniture with confusing instructions. When you are zeroed in and concentrating intensely, your executive attention network is highly active.
Next up, we move to the imagination network. Now, this is the engine for your daydreams. It's the part of your brain that creates mental simulations about future events. It's also highly active when you're practicing empathy, like when you're actively considering other people's thoughts or perspectives. You can think of it as the network of what-ifs and could-bes.
And finally, we have the salience network. Think of this one as the ultimate traffic director. It constantly monitors both your internal consciousness, how you're feeling, what you're thinking, and the events occurring outside your body in the real world. Its entire job is to take all that incoming data and direct your attention to what's most important at any given second.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the counterintuitive catch to all of this. You might think that having all 3 of these highly active networks firing at 100% would make you a super genius. But actually, when all these networks are fully active, it can diminish creative thinking. No way, right? The secret to boosting creativity isn't turning everything up to the max. It turns out, reducing the activity of your executive attention network just a little bit is actually what boosts our creativity.
Let's dig into that in Section 4, the science of spontaneity.
Researchers actually proved this phenomenon by looking closely at people whose brains naturally lack intense, locked-in focus. In one fascinating study, they looked at 2 groups of kids, a group with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and a group without ADHD. They gave both groups a series of tasks designed to test their working memory, and the results were incredibly revealing. The kids without ADHD showed more activity in their attention network, and much less in their imagination network. They efficiently focused on the task, But the kids with ADHD, they couldn't deactivate their imagination network to focus on the task. And because of this, their overall response times were slower.
But here is the incredible silver lining of that study. Children and adults with ADHD absolutely have trouble focusing their attention, but again and again, research shows they are consistently more creative. Why? Because their imagination network is highly active, essentially all the time. Focused attention has actually been shown to limit spontaneity. By not being able to lock down that executive attention network, ADHD brains are flooded with spontaneous, creative ideas.
And this brilliantly illustrates that exact same concept, but with professional artists. In another study, researchers put jazz musicians inside an fMRI machine to scan their brains while they played. When the musicians played an overlearned, rehearsed musical sequence, like a standard scale, the brain structures of their attention network and working memory lit right up. But when they spontaneously improvised, everything shifted. The brain structures involved in the imagination network became far more active. So we have real-time proof that letting go of strict focus and embracing spontaneity literally lights up the imagination centers of the brain.
So, the crucial point is, how do we apply this? Section 5. How to boost creativity.
How can you trick your brain into turning down the executive attention network to let your imagination network shine? Well, here's your scientific 3-step action plan based strictly on the data. Step 1. To get your creative juices flowing, be spontaneous. If you aren't a jazz musician, just try singing in the shower. Seriously, it works. Step 2. Be distracted. Remember Dickens walking and Goethe on his horse? Try pacing around your room. Or hey, go ride a horse if you happen to have one handy. By giving your body a mild physical distraction, you're slightly occupying that attention network, which leads right into Step 3, letting your mind wander. By giving your brain a little bit of distraction, your mind can comfortably come along and wander too, opening the very door for your best ideas to surface.
Which leaves us with one final question for you today. Where will you let your mind wander? The science is super clear here. Your next great idea probably isn't hiding at the bottom of a spreadsheet while you stare unblinking at a screen. It's waiting for you to get up, move around, and embrace a little bit of distraction. So step away from the desk, let your imagination network take the wheel, and see what you can create. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, Focus Learners. Keep wandering, and I'll catch you next time.